Happy Wednesday afternoon. Welcome to the weekly briefing. This is the once a week time that we get together and have open conversations any way we can, talking about the things that are happening around our industry, issues that we're facing, some big picture questions or trends that we see at RevThink that we want to share with you. Today, I'm choosing to kind of follow your lead in this process here because I think this is a very open conversation because we know how honest it is. But before we jump into it, I do want to remind you all that this is the same time every week. A few people have been asking me for the last few weeks saying, hey, what's going on? Why don't we know that this is happening sooner? You do. It's the same time every week. If you want to, you can jump into RevCommunity and hit the RSVP button, and it will remind you weekly that this is happening. Or just add it right now to your calendar, at least to know that it's block off that half hour. You'll get the email earlier in the day. We're kind of learning to send that information out sooner, and then know what the topic is and be part of the conversation. The last thing I want to point out too is that we're working hard to turn this into as big of a conversation that you want to have in here. Sometimes we get that we're the ones that are presenting and doing what we, kind of getting a point across. But this is your conversation as much as ours. We take prompts from you in community, take prompts from you from what's being shared upon the web and all that stuff. So as much as possible, we want to work with you to get that information into your voice, into your words, and help us process together. And today, this is a great conversation to get that kicked off. Here, let's I'm have you, and just so you know, in my view, what I'm recording is everybody's like it's the Brady Bunch effect, all the squares and what have you. So I'm doing that because I think it inspires a little bit of more conversation. I would encourage you to turn on gallery mode if you're looking at this thing instead of speaker mode, just so you can see other people's faces and be ready to chime in and cut people off or whatever we want to do there. So what started this? There was a petition being passed around. I don't know, what is it, a week ago, 2 weeks ago? Many of you saw that, and someone shared it with me. I can't remember if I posted it on community specifically or one of you posted on community. But the conversation about what we want to do together as a group and community when it comes to pitching, I think is one that is always open for conversation because of the reality of the work that we're doing and what our clients want us to commit to when doing a project with them. And from the client point of view, why wouldn't you ask the question? If you've heard an interview with Steve Viola and anywhere in the Rev community, you know that he likes the pitch process. He's the creative director at FX. He likes the pitch process because he finds that part of the collaborative and creative moment that's happening, and to work through that process with the team that's out there. I think the people that work with Steve also know that he's very loyal to them. So they would call him a client, even though they might not get that one project. And I think that's a leverage that Steve has built up in his community with his creative people, and it possibly gives him that stronger effect. But many of us have been victims also to the third bid effect or the pitch effect, where we put a lot of work and effort into a project with little pay or no pay at all, hoping that we might get chosen to be accepted to that project. So a quote unquote payout would be available to us, and it doesn't come. And we feel violated, taken advantage of. If the person was honest with us, we might not have spent that kind of money. So we know what the challenge is. Is there anyone here that wants to just start us off with, let's say something in favor of the client side? Why we would want to do a pitch and know what that side is. Yeah, go ahead, Louis.
Can I just ask a quick question about the ground rules of what people are talking about, like to define the words, what people are talking about when they say pitch, because because there are paid pitches I assume nobody's objecting to, or are people objecting to paid pitches as well?
That's a really good question, because there's some even smart advice given that be careful when you're accepting a paid pitch, because you're giving over that IP for that payment process. It's a work for hire moment.
Mhm.
And I think for some of us, we understand that, and it's part of the proposal, and it's part of your economy to do a creative process with somebody and get paid for it. And others, you're saying, well, no, if I'm going to do it, I would like to own the IP side of it. So that is part of the debate, too, Lewis. But yeah, that's a good question to know, like paid, not paid, pitching, not pitching. It's all kind of part of the big conversation, isn't it?
Welcome.
Okay.
So Ryan, why do I feel like
Welcome.
you just are ready to go?
I mean, I just think it's hilarious that you presented Steve Viola and FX as like one of the like golden examples of a client that's terrific to do a pitch with, because I feel
Yeah.
like FX has been the do I love the things that come out of them when it finally comes out of them? Yes, but I feel like they self-admittedly in phone calls with them have been one of the biggest people have been like, we'll pay you a pittance and then we will do whatever we want with it, including glomming 7 different studios that kind of did everything they could to win a pitch together and then hand it to a
Yeah.
completely different team.
Yeah, I guess what I was saying is like, I think that he recognizes and is saying, I definitely want the pitch to be part of my process. That's the statement
I would
making.
think he would. It's
Yeah.
terrific for him.
So
He gets
so,
to get multiple people bringing in a bunch of stuff for almost
Yeah.
nothing, and then the
So-
result is
let's just say for,
something no one gets to
for
share a show.
a point counterpoint, there is something to say, like, of course, if you're a client, you would want that. I don't think it's only to take advantage of studios, but is there an understanding of why a client would and does like to enter a pitch process before they engage in a very long creative process or expensive creative process? There's something to kind of clear the tables, and then maybe even to ask multiple people to come up with ideas for the problem they have. There's definitely I understand a need on their side to have and to kind of process that pitch idea.
I mean,
Pretty
I
kind
think
of-
in the old school way, when it was a clear shootout and the terms and expectations were clear and fair, and you knew what you were getting into, and there was no real like necessary manipulation. When it was just a shootout, it's like, here, we're going to pay you some money to have some people to do something, and we're all going to look at it, and some will be awarded, and then they get to do the job. And it was clear, like from both sides what the expectations were. But I feel like that's why I said at the very top of it, like, I don't think pitch is a fair word, because I think there's 7 different flavors of what a pitch could be for
Yeah.
both sides, and it's
I
not just
think
a
that's
catch-all.
great. Yeah, I think that's what we're hearing too. It's if you guys listen to what Ryan's saying, it's interesting because the words that we're using to express this are the honest words too. There's a sense of like, is it manipulation? Is it taking advantage of us? Is it asking for more than we're being paid for? So I definitely think that when you're the ones doing the pitch, you have to ask yourself that question. Is there anybody like has an expression or understanding of where it would be beneficial for you to have a client that has an open pitch process? Hey, Ben Apley jumped in here.
How's everybody? I think in this kind of like, there's an umbrella when we talk about pitching on projects, and I think it's important to remember that the particular client matters and makes a difference. Like in advertising, specifically in America, I don't know if you guys remember, but the ANA started to file a lawsuit against Publicis Group because of not having competitive bids. So the brands on the brand side oftentimes require just a cost analysis standpoint, which I don't think they're wrong in wanting to know what things cost from different types of vendors when you're thinking about it from kind of a large marketing budget standpoint. And the other thing I wanted to just throw in about handing over IP. One thing that I've been told recently is that internationally, at least in Europe, if your pitch, you're not handing over your IP. You do retain those rights. But in America, very true. Like, hey, Shai Day, thanks for the $2,500. Here's our idea. So there's not like a one size fits all situation with pitching. That's all I was going to throw in.
That's well said. Yeah,
in Australia, no one gets paid to pitch, and you can do whatever you want with the idea. And lots of people put their favorite pitches up on their own websites.
Yeah, right.
But
Lewis,
isn't that the idea? What John, I'm sorry, Ben maybe just said about not every size fits all or whatever. isn't that the problem with the idea of standardizing this? I mean, to me, that's the issue, is that the relationship is, I mean, talk about relational sales, like it's different at every place. Like we've had pitches at FX that have gone so like nicely that they bonus us out afterwards because they're like, hey, we took your pitch, we're taking this in-house, we're going to develop it ourselves, take this money. And it's like, that's fair to me. You know what I mean? Like I didn't feel screwed at all, but I've definitely felt, I've never really felt violated because a lot of what we do, we're not a design company per se. We're like an entertainment marketing company broadly, general. I feel like we don't own any of the IP. I feel like we're always dealing with their IP and pitching around their IP, the client's IP. So it's a little different for us. But
Yeah.
but I do think it's a different situation with every client. So the idea of standardizing something or having a petition seems just a little bit ill-advised from my point of view, because it's just, it seems like it's going to piss people off.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm being naive.
But Lewis, you understand the intention too of the petition, right? It's this thought process of, is there possibly a different way of engaging? I saw in one of Ed's notes, he kind of said like a paid creative phase, right? So there's a creative exploration that's necessary. I would almost say the question then, isn't that petition therefore for us to start understanding what our value is more than it is a petition against our clients? When we're realizing that, it's like, wait, what we're saying is that we're all agreeing that we need a creative phase as part of all of our engagements and an open creative phase that's part of it. But how does that not eventually become a competitive, work product between different agencies? Who here is against pitches and or successfully doesn't have to do pitches with their clients?
I'm right here, Tim. It's Greg, and I'm ready to jump in. We've had a no pitch policy for years now. We're still in business. I could talk about it for a while. If you guys are interested, I can get into the details as to why we have a no pitch policy.
Just like, give us the 5-second version. What's the no pitch policy involved?
We do not do free work.
Yeah.
Period. And we've come out like that to clients. And some of them have been shocked and had attitudes. How dare you? Others have said, wow, thank you so much. I can't tell you how awkward it is for me to go to 3 to 5 design companies and ask them to do free work for us.
Yeah.
When we got, we've gotten some pushback, we've gotten some praise, but we decided to make it a pitch fee policy after, realizing that the no pitch policy kind of sounded negative and abrasive.
Okay.
So now it's like, hey, get some skin in the game. We don't do free work. Our ideas are worth something. And,
cool.
And I can go into more detail.
Jason James, you had a thumbs up on that one. You're on the same page, huh? I think you're on mute. Oh, he's walking.
Hello, sorry.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, sorry. It's windy. I'm in Melbourne, Australia. That's the sunglasses. Let's take it back a notch and think about the creative process and how, sorry. I can't think of any other industry that loves to screw itself over more. Straight up. That's all I got to say.
I love it.
That's
okay. Again, like,
that's it. It's like,
yeah.
Go buy a loaf of bread, and then decide halfway through eating the loaf of bread that you don't want the loaf of bread, and go back talk to the baker. That's about as blunt as I can be. It's silly.
Okay. So I'm game with that. I'm going to ask Ryan's question because it's a perfect follow-up question here too, and the same one I have. So then when would a pitch make sense? I get the idea of being screwed over. When doesn't make sense?
I think if you're getting paid for it.
Exactly.
Okay. So Greg, you're just saying no pitch for free, right? Jason, you're saying the same thing. Ed, is that what you're saying? I'm seeing Ed jumping in here. Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Ed.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, I'm learning as I go on everything, and listen to me or don't, or like love my opinion or don't, but like I would always rather pitch for free and own it, or be able to pitch with a large enough pitch fee to actually do something and sell it to the client. Like a discovery phase. Like if it's 25,000, 40,000 to pitch to them of what it could be, that's great. I can make some money off of it. It's worth my time. If it's like 3K and I'm going to spend 12K like to get the pitch out, like I'd rather own it and do it for free than take the 3K.
That's what I wonder. That's a good point. I wonder if one of the things that we're responding to and what we like about the petition process is we're realizing that other people commoditize us. Hey, we're willing to spend $3,000 to $5,000 on a pitch. Someone else is spending $10,000 to $15,000 on a pitch. Wow, when the time comes, it's not a one-to-one process, and that commoditization is there. Laura, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, adding to that, for me, it's always been like, how much should I share in a pitch? Here in Colombia, I think it's been different in the sense that I don't think that it's changed and it's still getting better and kind of, but they don't appreciate art. So they think that when we do a video or an animation or whatever, we press a button in the computer and it's done. So it's been hard to give a price that they will be willing to pay. So I don't know if paying for a pitch is something that it's in their client's mind. So it's something that I've wondered, how much should we share? Because my ideas have been stolen before in the past.
Right.
So it's something that really freaks me out. How much can I share, but still give a great idea? Or it's something that it's still quite playing in my mind.
That's a good question. What I like about the question you said is like the idea of how much should you share? Is there a value proposition in what you're sharing that you should hold back? Right? Is it, or putting your best foot forward and understanding that? That's one of the things we're always navigating in the how far, how much should we, could we, would we process, isn't it? Who has their hand up? Matt.
Yep. I love pitching when I worked for a company who they paid for it all, and I loved it. It was free. I'd do really great stuff, but it wasn't my dollar. And then I hated it when I had my own studio. And the end compromise was I would go to a client, they would say, we're interested in doing a project. We're thinking about pitching. I would say, all right, I'm happy to pitch, but it can't be competitive. I present 1 or 2 ideas. If you like it, you take it, and we go forward. And I'll tell you what, with the percentage on that, it was high. It was around 80% of once we presented the ideas that we went forward. It was building the relationship and sucking up and that sort of thing. But it also allowed you to do work that was like you had a real good crack at it before you really had the brief and they were telling you what to do. So I'm anti-briefing in general, anti-pitching, but I think that that's a good in-between that sort of works if you can smooth them into doing that.
Yeah, I like the expression of the idea of like, given the opportunity to prove something, there is something that we like about that, right? Give me a chance, I'll prove it to you. Give me a chance to be in the room. Maybe have an opportunity to get a leg up or create an opportunity for myself that I wouldn't have without trying to prove it first. I think as creatives, we like that opportunity that someone gives us, but then we know that we're also giving up something along the way that or do we have to do that for free? Can we somehow qualify ourselves sooner? That's a good question. All right, Nico, you're next. I like the raising hand thing. You guys keep on raising hands. You want?
It's also a question. So for a while, like we do free pitches and we also gotten paid pitches, but I always felt like it's an established process which I can't necessarily tear down. So I'm trying to find how can I take advantage of it. So I think one of the things we did was, one, if we have a pitch and we win, we tuck in costs that we spent on it in the project. So that way we kind of recoup from that. And then for stuff that we lost, we've got work that we show. That's how I kind of saw it. So I always saw every pitch as an investment at that point.
Yeah. So. That's great. Ryan, chime in here really quick with that last comment you just made. So we get that on.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like, the industry's changed so much. I don't feel like I've been in it for forever, but it definitely felt like when I would work at studios, there'd be 3 guys or women in the back of the room somewhere they were just the style frame designers. They're the team that put the pitch together for the CDs, and that was part of a cost of doing business, is that you had staff people to pitch. But now when everybody's remote and relying on freelance, and there's one CD going 5 different ways, and you got like specifically get an artist just for a specific look and find another freelancer, like get Justin Harder to do just this thing and this other, like it's a totally different cost, like a different hit, right? In that way, where it's like, oh, I got to bring in 3 different people to do this for free. So I'm already negative before I ever even get going, and I might not win. And I can't use that if I got $3,000. I can't like use it in another pitch or put it on my site. Like, it feels like the business has changed while the business has changed, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's commoditized us in that process, hasn't it? That's not really fair. Greg, you're next.
Thank you. Hey, Ryan, good point. Especially with the freelancers and AB5 now making freelancing illegal in California. It makes business.
How is that going to work again? Can someone explain me how that's going to work?
That's crazy.
Yeah. But one thing I wanted to mention is the reasons why you may, everyone has the right to do whatever they want with their company. And they're going to have their reasons. And one of the reasons we went to our policy is we started asking questions, and whether it was myself as an owner or working at other companies, I realized something. Nobody ever asked the right questions early on in the pitch process. Even at other companies, we would work on a pitch, we would present the $100,000 idea, and we had no idea what the real budget was. And then we would get the pitch and they're like, oh, we got 50K. Now you're trying to figure out how to make this work. You've already, spent 5-10 on the pitch. And I think the thing that's really important is to ask, the pros always ask the right questions, right? So 1, is this a bake-off? Are there 3 to 5 companies pitching on this? What's your budget? Because I'm not going to present the $100,000 idea if you've only got 10, right? And
100%.
We all know that the best work doesn't always win, and we've always been on either side of that coin. Tim, you mentioned the third bidder, and we've been on either side of that coin as well. But as an owner, I'm not interested in, let's just call it a 3-company pitch where the best work doesn't always win. Some companies might be presenting the $100,000 idea because they didn't know that they had a $10,000 budget. And at the end of the day, I got a 30% chance of winning. If I'm lucky, I don't like those odds.
Okay, that's awesome, Greg. I think that you're getting down to some practical things here. I'm going to be practical myself. I usually cut this thing off after a half hour, but this conversation's happening. So reschedule your next meeting. We'll keep this thing rolling past the 30-minute point, no problem. Because I feel like we're just beginning to define what the problem is, really. And Greg's starting to I eventually want to turn the corner and put some practical effort into place. Because I think now that we're all together and able to talk to each other, we're all in agreement of some of the issues that are at hand and things we want to do differently. But I do think, again, there's a practical business application here for pitching, and we got to wrap our heads around what the issue is, so that we can ask the right questions that Greg was started to talk about. Seth Chaffee, you're up next. There's a couple of Seths with their hands up, so you're.
Yeah, it's weird having more than one Seth. I'm not used to.
I know, right?
Yeah, I don't like the term pitch at all, just because of the insinuation. It's very one-sided. It's very, we have something to sell you. And anytime you come into a room with that kind of energy, I mean, of course, you're going to feel robbed if you aren't compensated for it. I think what's replacing that for me is kind of like dating, right? Like you kind of want to see if you make sense with the client as much as they want to see if they make sense with you. And I think sometimes we focus so much as being providing a technical service or an art skill, that we're thinking the only value we bring to the room is what kind of beautiful things we can put in front of the client. And I think a lot of the value we offer is not just in the art we produce or the ideas we come up with, but also in the way we communicate those ideas, the way we listen to the client and make them feel heard. We just had a pitch with a client the other day where they told us they had gone out to 2 other studios And they said, you're the only one that made us feel heard. Like you really listened to what it is we want. And we really didn't present a lot of original artwork or try to pitch them on an idea. If anything, if it makes sense, we like the idea of more dates with this company.
Yeah.
We might suggest an exploration phase if getting right into it doesn't work, where we can kind of go on a few dates, test the waters, see if they like our skill set, they like the way we communicate, we listen to them.
Yeah.
They pay a little bit up front, but it's collaborative. It's not just us pitching our ideas, it's us hearing what they need.
So I love
that's-
what you're saying, Seth. There's actually a pivot in the words that you use that I don't think most of us are used to, like grabbing that moment, but there's something very specific about what you just said. And I'll present it like this. I'll present it in the form of a question. If I had an open, let's just say I was a film studio, and I say, hey, in the next year, I'm going to produce 12 films. If you have a film, I'd love to hear what your film is. Right? Most of us understand that economy, that there are filmmakers reading books and optioning things and doing things, basically building it first and then pitching it as an idea, because the recipient doesn't yet know what they want. If there was no pitching, Shark Tank would be a very boring TV show. But the idea of the other side investing in who you are and the possibility of that investment so that you can grow together, I think is a positive way of understanding a pitch. Where we often sell ourselves short is that we think of ourselves as a service-based business, and we put too much of the value on the other side for them to tell us what they want. Hey, just tell me what you want. Now, here's the problem. They know what they want in some cases, and they're just shopping around. In other cases, can I pitch you beyond what you think you want to what you actually need? How is that not what we're doing in our creative process anyway? So I think we've taken this word pitch and we put it to something that has a very specific connotation of like, we have to prove ourselves to you, instead of opening up to like, is there moments where I could, pitch an additional phase or pitch an additional cost or pitch an additional direction, even though I'm already collaborating with you. We think we know what that word pitch means in that point, that moment. And the difference is just how we consume, or we're being consumed by our clients in that early process, that early pitch process. And I think that's what frustrates most of us. Am I onto something there? Does anybody have an experience where they pitch something and won, and they're so thankful that they had the opportunity to pitch and could express to us what was different about it? Nico, you shook your head. I'm reading people's faces, by the way. If you're not, if your face isn't on, I can't see your expressions.
I mean, we had this one pitch, and again, it's one of those things where if we didn't get invited, I don't think we ever have gotten into that specific space to do that kind of work. So to even get invited to that, to be able to do that and then win was like, wow. Not only did we, someone found us and trusted us to like be part of this, even maybe we were the third option, but whatever it is that we did, they liked us and then we got it. So I don't think we'd ever gotten it if we didn't get it into that, into that round.
So there is a moment where you could see the door is open to you. Ryan, did you have an example like that?
I mean, I probably said it too many times, but the best example I have is whenever you can actually find out what the person's problem is, not the project's problems. Like it's always trying to find the bigger ask, the bigger problem, the itch you can scratch. It's not in the RFP. It's not in the like, hey, I need a 30-second thing. It's like, no, what do you need? Like, do you need to get promoted? Like, do you need to look cool? Do you need to be the arbiter of like the next hot thing? Like the best thing that ever happened to me is when I asked on a $20,000 ask, like, may I ask you a question? Because I really think you're asking this. Do you have permission to like just, and you don't get that when it's like, just send us a deck and we'll let you in a week know if you want or not. Like that's what the whole all remote, nobody ever gets to be in the same room with anyone. You never even get to do this. Like that's what's destroyed pitching to me. Like just sending a deck over and hoping somebody else reads it and understands what you're saying. Like I hate that. That's not what this whole bargain was supposed to be about, right? It's supposed to be about relationships. It's supposed to be about helping people. If it's service, it's helping people. It's not just fulfilling a checkbox. And when you get to do that, those are the times where like a $20,000 job turns into a $3 million job. Because you actually find out it's not that thing, it's 3 other things. And they didn't know you knew how to do that.
I can't wait for you guys to hear the podcast I just recorded with Will Travis. And those of you who are in the Confab small group there's a, you can watch the behind the scenes now, because he literally addresses the conversation with Scion when they're launching the car, and how important that, what do you say, the $20 million question is, Ryan? Like that moment where you can ask the real question and get to the bottom of it, but knowing how to ask a question. Andrew, you seem to have your hand raised. Did you have your hand raised? Yeah. You're on mute. I didn't.
Yep. Sorry, guys. One of the things that like I was hearing mentioned a lot is like the third company. Like, but the thing that is interesting to me is all the biggest jumps that we've ever had have come from, like, the biggest jumps, not the incremental, but the biggest ones come from being the third company and blowing them away. You're the one that's thrown into the mix, and then we find out we didn't expect you to even place, but you blew us away. So you won. So it's, there is something that comes out of that process. And it was funny because when you brought it up, when you're like, can you think about it? It didn't strike me at first, but then I thought about it. All the really big jumps, that kind of jumping to the next rung, have come from being that third company in the roundup.
Yeah, in that case, we'd love it, don't we? Or like, we hate pitching until it means I can grow my company. Then I want to pitch myself into it. Ron, you've thrown a couple comments out here of this idea of what the pitch process would mean to you. And you ask an idea of like creating a standard. If you could write the Ron standard, what would you have the parameters of that standard be? You might be on mute, by the way. Oh, no, we still can't hear you. Anyway, I guess Ron's going to keep up with the typing.
Get
Darn it. All right. We'll get back to you later. Go ahead, Lewis.
I think I don't want to belabor this, but I think there's a wish to have a standard when there's chaos. And I think there's chaos in pitching because, again, it's different everywhere you go. And there are people who are willing to get into another line of business, pitch for free, or, maybe make an investment in that or whatever, however they want to put it. But, I'd love for Ron to get on audio to hear what he has to say. Because I'm curious about like this notion of systematizing things or making a standard. I think that's just a wish.
We argue, Lewis, that there is a standard. We just don't like it. Right?
Well,
there's a
yeah,
current
no,
standard. It just works against us or something. Is that what we're saying?
Well, that's one way to put it. But I mean, like the idea of us all like, it's like trying to get everybody to, I'm going to bring something up that's maybe taboo, but
Go
like,
for it.
can I do that?
Yeah, of course.
This notion of like trying to standardize MSAs is a suicide mission, and it's crazy talk. Like, it's the most insane thing I've ever heard in my life. And the idea that we're all going to say, oh, corporations around the world who all have inside counsel should do what we say is insane. Yeah. First of all, as a rule. Secondly, why would we want that? If I can get the MSA, I can have a conversation with them. And all of a sudden there's relationship to be had. Yeah. And so I don't want to bring up a taboo subject, but I mean, that's what I mean, like about the standardization. It just seems a little nutty to me.
Yeah. Go ahead, Matt.
I feel like, yes, in a small country like Australia, there's a possibility, small amount of studios to do it. But it's like I try to get people together and it's almost impossible to get them all together for a meeting. So I feel like with the pitching is one option, sales is the other option, getting out there and winning it. I just always said, let's go out there and win clients. That's the best way to do it. I forget about the problem of pitching, and my new business development lady, she found that frustrating. But the real work is getting out there, doing the sales, building the relationships, finding out those questions that they want answered. And that is the way around it, which is to put your efforts in that. and say, well, that opportunity of that pitch is not, we're not going to invest in that. We're going to invest in going and doing a lot of meetings and that sort of stuff.
I like that. There seems to be an antidote that you guys keep bringing up when it comes to relationships. I think there's something different when you're saying, hey, here's a person that I trust. Here's a person I can collaborate with. Ed, you were going to say something too. I was going to comment back on your, everyone's in a different position. Thing.
Well, I think, yeah, I think in the pitching world, like we'll never be there because there's going to be someone who's young and hungry and like they're going to pitch because it's like the first time I pitched for FX, it was like, it's FX. I'm going to pitch for them. Why not? You know, we've done 3 now and I'm kind of like, how can we change it and make it better? You know,
Yeah.
so like there's always a different company, a different thing. Like there's freelancers being companies, which is crazy. You know, that's a whole other thing that I'm sure Summers can talk to too, of like, in my mind, maybe they are companies, maybe they're not. I really haven't settled on that. But like a big thing that I am trying to do is work on standards. Like who was it that mentioned, sorry, about like the MSA, Lewis? Like totally, I agree with you. I would love to like have the MSA first, but like I also think there's a great standard where we can all work better to be able to get paid easier, right? Because like on our biggest MSAs, which are like, you know, like large corporations, like not for necessarily like massive, like it's definitely not 7-figure jobs, but 6-figure jobs. Like on certain jobs, we can negotiate getting paid earlier and faster, right? And on other things, like we can't, right? Or we choose not to. But I feel like having a standard of just like doing that puts it a little bit more in like our court as like a group of creative professionals of like, you know, if you knew like that I was working with, say, like I'm not working with Fox Sports, but I'm working with Fox Sports, and you're like, I work with Fox Sports and they pay me net 90. And I was like, oh, they pay me net 10. Like, wouldn't you want that? Like, wouldn't you want to try to like get to that place? And I feel like that's where it's not like a union, but there's like a standard.
But you know what the standard's gonna be, right? It's gonna become net 90. It's like it's not the net 10s go away in the standard, right? Because if I'm negotiating with everybody, I gotta do one that I'm willing to agree with.
Sure, but they all have so much money. Like they can't use us as the bank. Like billion-dollar companies can't use small, you know, even big companies that make $20 million, $40 million. Like we're nothing compared to what they are. Like, and they use us as the bank to be able to do their creative work.
Yeah.
Right. But every operations or CFO person is trying to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, they're built that way. Like, I'm not saying we should suffer it just blindly and without, you know, without saying anything. I'm just saying that's, they're built that way. They're looking for bills not to pay on time.
Of course.
Always
Test, is this thing on?
We have, yeah, there you go, Ron. You're back. What we have is like, we have some schools out there that do it in a way, right? Photographers own their work. Recording artists own their work. And there's an understanding and a standard that says, hey, to engage the ongoing artwork is something you pay to play. In motion graphics, I truly remember this in the late 90s when we were trying to push this and Imaginary Forces to say, hey, how about you give us recurring interest for it? And it was really simple. Like, how about we just give you a buyout? And then like, oh yeah, right. We just, because there are also buyout deals. So the opportunity that you have to build up, though, I think, is that moving from what we often see as a service-based entity to an asset-based entity. It's ours. This work is ours. The pitch and idea is ours, and we're lending it to you, or we'll sell it to you. Is this opportunity of like, now I'll pitch because you can't take my asset from me. I'm just going to walk around to see if you want to. Would you leverage it? Can you build off of it? Can I make money with you off of it? I think that's just a different approach to this conversation. I think that's where we know when we're saying relationship, what that has in mind. Ron, you ready to jump in now? I'm waiting for your voice for 10 minutes.
Oh my God. I think there's been so much said already. Yeah, I mean, in the context of that petition that was going around, I read it and the problem I had with it is that it put the onus on the studios and not where it belonged, which was the clients. So I think a set of standards that we all agree to that we can then use to keep clients in line so that they're like, there's 7 people on this, or they don't tell you the budget, or they don't tell you who you pitch it against, all these types of things. That doesn't make it an even race for people. I think we could probably come up with some sort of a standard for that. So at the very least, at the base level, we're all starting at the same starting line. And that's, a good place to start at.
Yeah. I think that one is just have a standard for ourselves, right? To know that we have a desire to do something and to lift each other up in the process. You guys know my saying, it's all ships rise and fall with the same tide. It's one thing to be a ship, it's the other to be the tide. And I think when we're talking about in this conversation is like, is there opportunity for us all to lift each other up into something? But I'm going to say, I think where we know, and what Ed's point was earlier, is if what it is a preventative mechanism, it's just going to dumb us down to the worst. Everyone's getting 90 payment terms because it's going to get us to the lowest, most common, or most advantageous that people will be willing to negotiate with you. If you want to step up and rise up others, we have to bring something into the conversation and build each other up. And I think that's another standard that we can put out there. I think Kevin Robinson, if you guys know Kevin Robinson from Juniper Jones, he's another podcast I recorded last week, and he started a thing called the Creative Department. And the conversation I had with him, I feel like he's asking that question. How do we raise each other up? What are our assets as a creative department and his brand that builds up something bigger and creates momentum towards progress instead of preventative in its way? I think that's probably like where we're trying to navigate the balance here. Ryan, did you I miss something you were gonna say?
I mean, I was just saying, like, as long as they're like these types of clients are our primary or like our sole source in some cases, like, and they're our highest priority, and in a lot of ways, like Louis was saying, like we are their lowest, if not they want to push back paying us for as long as possible. It's hard for me to see like where there's leverage to be like, nope, we're not going to Ed's point as well, because there's always going to be the hungry young, studio or solo freelancer that's going to come in and kind of like try to snag it until they get burned by it. Right now, I think somebody said this earlier, we're the one industry that lets ourselves get burned all the time willingly, almost gleefully. Dude, I go back to thinking about going on Marvel shootouts, and the heads of every, IF and 7 other studios all show up with their 50-page, 200-page books, all blinking at each other, looking at it. She'll be like, I guess I'll pitch right after you. And then you walk in, you pitch, you come out, and everybody's sitting around waiting, like, who won? And you all go to lunch and share each other's decks just to see how stupid we each were. Like in that world, that's what they literally always expect of you. Like in a world where you just decide not to do that. And honestly, there's been studios, there's been shops that don't do that kind of pitch anymore. Just they're out of it, but you have to see where it goes.
I love that. You guys are familiar with the book Win Without Pitching. I find this to be misquoted so often because when people throw this out there, they throw the title out there. And what they often want to make the point is without pitching. So in an argument on a LinkedIn or a chat thing, it's like, yeah, but win without pitching kind of a thing. And it's this thought process of like, can we get to a life without any pitching? But my read of the book says it's not about without pitching. It's 2 other words. It's the win part. How do we win together? And a manifesto. I made this point earlier in one of our small groups. It's not called instruction book. It's called a manifesto for a reason. And this thought process of what Blair inspired in many of us when he wrote this book 20 years ago, whatever, is a point that he makes in near the end where he says, the cause of our revolution, which is what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about a changing of a tide. So the cause in our revolution is not to rid the world of a free pitching. So he's not saying without pitching. It is to build a business that allows us to rise to the highest heights possible. I love that. It's like to build up businesses. It's like, that's what we're saying to each other. Are we cutting ourselves down? Are we cutting ourselves short? And I have a feeling the petition is more about us than it is about our clients, because we're saying, hey guys, we're cutting ourselves down. Because I like this. last piece, it's in the idea of like to bind together. And that's the antidote that many of you have talked about today using the term relationship. It's like, how do we bind together with others who seek what we do? And that seeking to me is a very strong word, because it's that person looking for you as the answer. They're seeking you out as the solution to their problem. And we have to build each other up in a revolution that says, hey, why would we do this to each other? Right? So I don't think the debate is as much against our clients or the people who ask us for it. I think that they have a good cause and a good reason to do it, and people are performing to that cause and they're getting results. How are we going to change that behavior? Unless we change the behavior first ourselves and ask the bigger question of like, how do we bind together? How do we do something greater? And not in a union-based way, Lewis. Maybe it's the thought process of like, unionizing is not the right way, but recognizing the asset values that we bring into conversation together to give each other that praise and opportunity for that asset, I think is really huge. I know Greg has his hand up. He had his hand up before I shared that slide. I wanted to get any response to that little piece of the conversation before. I would love to just in the last 5 minutes here, discuss therefore, what is it that we want? Just for clarity, just to get a sense of like, and I'll say this, let's not be defined of what we're not. Let's become defined about what we are. So let's not be preventative. Let's think about something different. Matt, 1 second. I'm going to let Greg talk first, and then I'll jump over to you. Thank you. Go ahead, Greg.
Thanks. Real quick, kind of on what you were touching on. When we've talked about our pitch fee with clients, they couldn't seem to wrap their head around it. And I said, hey, take it out of your budget, give each company $5,000 and show them that you've got some skin in the game, and they will appreciate you, respect you for it, put together better work, and just make the overall budget, 10, 15 grand less. And they were just like, they had their minds blown. They're like, oh yeah, I guess we can do that. Oh God, that makes sense. So at the end of the day, on this one job in particular, we got our pitch fee. The other two companies did not. And I think we got the job, and we took, $5,000 off the top of whatever their budget was. And that's how it played out.
I'd say in the economy that you're approaching here, Greg, you would say, hey, to raise each other up when the opportunity comes, it's not just advocating that we get a pitch fee, but advocating that there's pitch fees for anyone else pitching. That might reduce the number of people on pitching list from 5 to 3, right? That might correct that part of it. But also say, it would be interesting to say, I'll put skin in the game here. Unless you're paying the other people to pitch, I'm not going to pitch. To be like, it's got to be all of us are beating each other up and putting yourself on line. Like, I'll walk away. This is not right unless you're doing that. So there's something in the building up of the others that makes the standard part of the practice, because we're willing to have each other's back in a way. I think that's an interesting, it's a different way of proposing something than a petition. Matt, you were going to say something.
So since 1998, when I started, the industry has changed dramatically. People have learned so much. We were so amateurish at the beginning, and then people have changed, and then they've taught each other how to do it. And like things like proper quoting, timelines, design concepts, all these things have been developed and then taught to others. And basically, I think that the high standards that a lot of the companies do developing their pitches, like they're awesome, they teach them to each other. If we can develop those standards around pitching and negotiation, the stuff that Tim's always talking about, and then teach them to others, that's the best way forward, I see.
Smart.
Because it's just, and then it sort of goes across the industry. Instead of it being standardized, it's sort of, we're doing it this way, it's working. You do it that way, it's working. And then slowly everyone rises together.
Yeah.
That's just a thought.
But you have to create a base as you build things up, right? It can't just be a house of cards.
Anyway,
anybody else have a thought? So who else has a thought, just a dream, we'll say right now, of another way we can build each other up in this process? Is there something else that you would advocate for other people if a client asked you to do something? In the pitch process, at least. Because I think like things I'd want to protect in a pitch is, again, if it's my asset, I own it, right? So that's another thing. It's like, hey, I'm not going to do this unless I know that it's something I'm bringing to you. I'm pitching this to you. This is mine. And I want to know if this meets your standard, or this is the kind of work you need, or if we can collaborate together in partnership. I want to have that mentality walking into a pitch. There's a practical part of pitching that I think that we all kind of know is built into it too. Hung asked the question of just like, where does the money go when the pitch phase goes there? So even the thought process of, do we spend it all plus our own 5,000? Like if it's a $5,000 pitch fee, do we spend 10? Would you want somebody to hold you back from spending above the pitch fee? Would you want an industry standard that says, hey, if the pitch fee is 5,000, everyone should cap their spending? Like how we do elected officials with salary caps or whatever, fundraising caps or something like that.
I mean, I don't think we're looking for the pitch. I don't think we're looking for limits on what to do the pitch. I think the pitch serves as a limiter for like things like you were saying, like, you know, if you're paying each participant $5,000 or you're paying each participant a percentage, you're going to start by giving them good information because you've already put money into the game. So like the idea of having them pitch without knowing the final budget is probably going to go out the window. The idea of having them pitch without knowing half the requirements of the job is going to go out the window. So what it's really locking us into is better practices of getting better information and being able to pitch better. I wouldn't see a problem of like going over if that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
I think it's more about kind of I think what it comes down to is, you know, somebody said skin in the game is making sure that if there is a pitch process, both sides have skin in the game.
I love that part. I love that. That's a great one. Ed, you raised your hand first, but Ryan hit the button first. So I'm going to give it to Ed and then Ryan. Sorry, Ryan.
I'll let Ryan go.
No, go
So,
ahead.
go
I'm
ahead.
calling on you. You're up.
You got to go ahead.
I mean, I think it's just a tough thing of like, again, there's a great analogy of like, I'm watching this pirate show on Netflix and like some pirates are taking the pardon, some are not. Like it's the thing of pitching and this whole, I personally don't like this whole website. Like I like the idea of building community. I don't like it because like, it doesn't allow you to make a choice, right? Like I feel like if I sign that, then I have no choice of what I can do and how I can run my business. I'm like trying to back something for a moral or ethical reason, and I feel like a pitch should be done on like a business reason, not a moral or ethical thing, I guess.
Yeah. I like that the fact you brought up pirates, by the way, because one, pirates are cool, but two, there is a like, and from my experience, because I started my career in the 90s, my saying is the pirates eventually become the Navy. And if you ask me, all of you that started in 2006, you were the pirates. You're the one disrupting the norms of when I got started. And so this disruption, eventually you have to realize like, hey, we pirates are now banding together to see if we can't form a Navy and protect all the stuff we've plundered. Like that's some of what we're asking for. And we know this is reality. Something else will be a disruption to that. So we have to just recognize that's part of the creative process and the world that we live in. But I think that's where we back each other up, then a standard can be put up there. And that's why like a constitution lasts longer than just, you know, a set of basic rules. Ryan, did you want to jump in or did he?
Yeah. I mean, I would say like, and I guess this is true for everybody, but like we all have discounted a job before, right? Like you've invoiced and said it as a discount, friends and family or 10% to make it hit your budget, but I'm going to let you know I'm discounting. I feel like we should also, no one's ever going to tell me if I owned a company that I couldn't discount a job just to be able to get it in, right? And lose a little bit of my margin, but then I build the relationship, whatever, right? I feel like we should reserve the right to waive a pitch based on whatever caveats we offer. And like for me with Ed, we've had this happen a couple of times. We're like going forward now, like I'm never going to pitch for free if I don't get to speak directly to the decision maker.
Love that.
I will waive my pitch fee. I will waive my pitch fee.
That's great.
But this is the trade. It still has value. The pitch fee that I should be getting still has value, but I want direct access to the person who's going to say yes or no, because I want the right to build a relationship. I don't want to have to go through 3 people and be your art director that I don't even get to have the conversation. That's the price you have to pay. And if you're not comfortable with that or can't, then we'll do it another time when you can.
Yeah, think about that. We want to band together with people that seek what we do. You're saying that. You're saying, hey, if you don't value this relationship, why would I Why would I share anything with you for free if I'm not valued at all in this conversation or in this pitch process? That doesn't make any sense. But if I'm talking to a decision maker, I'll talk all day long about my ideas.
Yeah,
I'll give you tons of ideas. That's what I want to do with you, is collaborate and come up with amazing ideas so I can execute them and your brand can grow and we can live in harmony together.
But that's where I agree with whoever said this at the very top of it, that we do give away our value, even if it's perceived value and not like actual on the books value. Like, to me, that's almost worthwhile. It's worth so much more, because if I can't get that audience, I can't get that ability to create trust or intrigue or heat, then who cares about the $5,000 for one deck for a small job? Like, that doesn't mean much to me.
Yeah. Greg, hand raised.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to say one more thing about this that helped us make our decisions is, obviously, if I should preface it by saying that we've actually been invited to pitch on pilots. And when I asked what the budget for your pilot graphics were, they said $1,500. I was like, are you kidding me? So that's a caveat to this, which is pitches, in my opinion, and of course there's pitches that you want to do for the relationship, and it's a moneymaker if you get the job or what have you, or you build the relationship. But most of the time, what I've realized is that pitches take away from paying clients and paying work. We are now taking a client that we have a great relationship with, that we have a shorthand with, that is giving us real money to do good work for them, and we are finding cracks and empty spaces in our schedule and working late and burning out the team for a pitch. I would rather be loyal to the customer that I have a relationship with, that is loyal to me, and give them their money's worth.
Yeah, good call.
And of course, do paid pitches as you need.
Yeah, you're finding one of those moments again where we commoditize ourselves. We're saying, hey, we're so desperate, we're so willing to give up everything, instead of take the relationships that we have that are valuable, or the work that we do that's valuable. We're giving that up for the next freebie. That's where the commoditization takes place. Let me share something with you guys. I did this post last night because I've been thinking about you in this process and asked the question, what makes the difference? And I want you to have a core of what you're about and where it comes from. And I find that most of us know that we have values, convictions, purposes, and dreams. That's why we're doing this crazy business, even though our moms can't find a way to explain what we do to our friends, right? We're doing something so unique, and it comes from a unique place. So many of us want to get into this field to make the right decisions and stay in this field doing what we love to do. And when something harms us or is coming after us, we feel threatened. And this is what feels threatened: my values, my purposes, my dreams, my convictions. So I want you to just remember that as you're making these decisions, to know what the core is. I found some work that just motivates me, and some people out there doing things that are paid and unpaid to make a difference. And one to me that's so interesting is the one from Trollback and Company, when Jacob pitched United Nations on making graphics for the global goals. And I think that's something globally is recognized, but it was a conversation that Jacob walked into and had a relationship to make that happen. I think that's the moments we're really looking for. Who are the people that seek out who we are to build up not only ourselves, but greater causes, greater purposes, and take on bigger challenges? I love this conversation. I think this dialogue was super great. I hope many of you found it relieving, at least relieve some pressure and some steam from what's going on. This will always be an ongoing debate. If you need to refresh Blair's book, download that sucker. It takes like 2 hours to just listen to it, but it'll create some principles behind this pitch process and who you really are and the value that you have out there. I think that's the antidote for pitching, to know that you are valuable, you are important, you have original ideas, and people want to use those. That is the asset you're bringing to the table. We don't want that to be commoditized and hurt ourselves or hurt our industry. Okay, final words. Anybody? Nope, it's too late. 3:01. I have to get to my next call. Can I just say this? I love you all. Thank you all for being part of community. We exist so you thrive in business, life, and career. Take me up on that challenge anytime. In the meantime, we'll kind of keep this going, and we'll see you next Wednesday, if not sooner. Bye, everyone. Have a good week.